Hey everybody, hopefully this is working. Trying something different here. This is the first time that I'm doing a live chat, live from my studio. You can see all around here. And I'm literally just looking at a picture of myself right now talking. I have to imagine that you will be out there and that you are out there. There's a little bit of delay here, but if this works, you should be able to put some comments over to the right of your screen, and you can ask me some questions. In the interim, what I'll do is talk to you a bit about what this is all about. Hey, I'm Noah Scalin. I'm an artist and most well known for the Skull a Day project. I assume you know all this if you're here, but why not give you a recap? And my company, Another Limited Rebellion, just did a thing called the Creative Sprint in April. And what we did was we basically offered people a way to get a little challenge every single day for 30 days to see what the experience of doing what I did, which was a year-long daily creative project, but a little mini version to sort of get the experience. And we had a great time doing it. A whole bunch of people signed up. So hopefully some of you are the ones tuning in. But again, if you're not, and this is new to you, just want to give you a little background. Yeah, so what we did was we gave everybody a little thing to do for 30 days and just saw amazing results. It was really awesome. And that encouraged us to keep going with this. So what we're doing now is in May, which we're about to wrap up, obviously, is we did a new sprint just for the month that wasn't a daily one, just a monthly challenge. And we have a new one for June coming out shortly, and then we'll do July, August. And then hopefully in September, the idea is to have another launch of the actual 30-day creative sprint. We want to get a bunch of people signed up for it. So if you haven't done that yet, before I get into all this, creativesprint.co is the place to do it. And I'll try to remember to type that into the little chat section so you can click on the link in a minute or so, or maybe at the end of this. Actually, oh, look at that. I actually put it on the screen. I'm smart enough to have done that already. So creativesprint.co is the place to go and sign up if you haven't yet. It's really easy. Just give us your email. We won't spam you. What we're going to do is just give you a little task to do every month, and then hopefully we'll get you going on September for a whole 30-day challenge. The reason that I'm here right now is to talk to you about what's going on this month, and hopefully you've given it a try if you haven't yet. But what we tried to do was come up with a theme, and our theme for May was get away from your desk or get out of your environment. When I did the Skull a Day project, I came up with a series of things that basically I discovered about how I was creative and what got me motivated, and they were all kind of counterintuitive. I've spent years being a creative professional, and I just thought the way to do it was to knuckle down, and I think what a lot of people assume, you just show up to the work and you do the work and it gets done. But I had really gotten stuck because of that mindset. And so when I did the Skull a Day project, I discovered a bunch of really unusual things that now I intentionally put into play. And one of them is this idea about getting away from your desk. And so for me, it was really that I was sitting in front of a computer every single day, and I'm sure many of you are, because obviously if you're watching me, you're sitting in front of them right now. But what happened is I was doing that, and then I kept thinking like, oh, why am I not getting good ideas? I'm looking at all this cool stuff online. I'm working. But it was really the intentional getting away from the desk that was helping me during the Skull a Day project, when I really just got up and I went and I did something else. And what happened is that through the course of that year, I just had lots of really cool, amazing experiences that now I try to capture and intentionally do when I set about doing creative projects. What's interesting about the sprint is that I agreed to do it, even though I'd done a year-long creative project. And we asked all these people, hey, jump on board, do 30 days. I said I would do it too. And I was really daunted by this experience because I was like, I don't need to do this. I've done this before. And it was almost as scary as doing the original project, and I still got benefits from it. So it was really cool for me to discover that these things that I've been sharing now for a long time are still really valid, and that I need to be reminded of them. And so I think that's point one, is that even when you feel like this stuff, it's always good to revisit it and try again, and to try new things that get you thinking again. And I came up with new ideas during the 30-day sprint that I'm already applying. So in terms of the get away from your desk piece, for me, it was like just getting away from the computer for a little while helped a lot. First, because a lot of times I spend I sit in front of the computer and I'm just looking at all this other people's work, and I'm like, their work is so good. And of course I'm seeing like bodies of work. I'm seeing tons of work. Maybe they've created over years, or it's a collection of all these different people's amazing work. And I'm going, I can't produce this. I can't do any of this stuff. I'm terrible. And it just really disheartens me and makes me not want to be creative. So getting away from your desk and computer, just to get away from that stuff, because I think it's just a real overload of like other people's good work doesn't make you want to. Some good work, inspires you, but too much of it, to me, it shuts me right down. The other is just that getting out into the world offers you opportunities to have random experiences and do unusual things and have new thoughts. And so a lot of the times for me, it's really when I get away from my desk, it may be just about working with my hands, which I love doing, but it's also about often going somewhere on my bike. And I probably come up with my best ideas when I just am having to focus on not getting killed on my bicycle in a city. And because of that, my back brain can do some processing, and I always have some really interesting thoughts and new ideas that I can capture them when I get where I'm going. During this past month, the way I sort of encourage myself to apply the get away from your out of your environment, get away from your desk mindset was I actually had scheduled a series of meetings almost every single morning of the week out. And so I would bike, if I can, if the weather was good, to this location and have a meeting. A, it was just great somewhere else. But B, I would stay afterwards. And interestingly, this was work that I would normally run home to do on my computer. It was just email. But I'd bring my laptop and I would do the email just wherever I was. And even though it's the exact same work, doing it in a different place, I had a totally different experience. It was like, it was way more relaxing. I got to run into people and have these experiences where, I saw people I knew. They would say, hey, what are you doing? I got to talk about projects. They came up with new ideas for me, gave me suggestions. And so it was like all this fun, good energy was happening just because I changed the environment where I was doing the normal, boring email work. And then when I would come home, that stuff was done and I was ready to be creative and do creative work in my workspace here, rather than this just being sitting in front of a desk doing office work. So for me, there was a really good realization about changing that perspective. And so adding that little bit of time, additional time out of the office was a big revelation for me. The other thing that I did during this past month is that I really did some more collaborative work with other people who were part of the sprint, in that I sort of put this little contest out there and said, hey, let me do a little drawing for you. I've been doing these contour drawings as part of my personal sprint. And, these aren't great drawings by any measure. This was just me getting a practice, but it was cool because then I had set one more task for myself to do. And so when I went out, often what I would do is not only be doing some work on my computer, but pull out a notebook and do a little drawing. And just that, again, just that little bit of extra work, a little bit of creative fun work, had me connecting with people, had me doing fun things, drawing daily, which is a great practice. And again, I just got a lot from these little teeny tasks that were just adding, a little bit something different in my day that gave me a lot more back for having done it. So that's sort of where I'm at. What we've done with this thing is we set it up so that you could hopefully chat with us. There's like I said, there's a little sidebar here, and I think it's there, if I'm doing this right. That you can type some questions into, or if you're on Twitter, tweet at me at Noah Scalin, and I can answer your questions there. I am trying to manage this all by myself in the office. I'm looking over here and saying, like, is there anything that I see coming through on the question things? Okay, I don't see that. So I'm going to just keep talking for a little while, but hopefully if you've got some questions to ask, feel free to ask them. I think for me, again, sort of talking about this getting away from your desk thing, it doesn't, I think the thing a lot about this creative sprint concept and this idea of doing the daily work is it's not supposed to be so big and overwhelming and daunting that you don't do it. I think, a big thing here is what little changes, what little ideas can you put out there, can you try, that are really manageable. And so part of it too is like coming up with a task that maybe only takes a few minutes. So that way you're not super daunted, and then build up to the bigger stuff. And so, yeah, I'm going away from my desk for, a good hour or more out of the day. And maybe that's too much and that's overwhelming. But honestly, just standing up and walking outside and coming right back in could be enough to do it. But making it part of your schedule and a practice is the key. I just saw something come here. Hey, here's Margie just said hi. So hi, Margie. Without a question though. So add a question and I will answer it. So as I was saying, it's really, the scale is a key with these things. And I'll tell you that we really enjoyed watching what everybody was doing in the sprint. And that's another piece for us, was this idea of having this hashtag as the means of communicating with everybody. And so in this case, the idea of the it was hashtag creative sprint that we used, was a way to immediately form a community and have this support that comes from that. And so that's another big key about all this stuff, is that, you know, not only is it about doing these tasks, but it's about sharing them. And so the cool thing about the getting out piece is that then you're doing it publicly, right? Then you're in front of other people, then you are encountering other people, and hopefully they're asking you why you're doing what you're doing, and then you're telling them, because that's a big part of it, right? Is that that action, just of telling people, I'm doing this sprint, I'm getting out of my office, I'm doing something a little bit different, makes stuff happen. I got this great advice a few years ago from my friend Slash, and he, not the rock and roll Slash, another Slash, but he, Slash Coleman. So he basically was the person who told me about this idea of writing things down rather than having them in your head, right? It's that it's very amorphous when we're just thinking about creative work and what we want to be doing and our goals. And when you write them down, you know, it becomes this sort of magic spell, was the way he described it to me. And I was like, oh, okay, you know, this sounds sort of corny to me a little bit, and I'm really daunted by business plans and all these numbers and stuff. But when he said it that way, I was like, yeah, I can do that. And I, you know, wrote some stuff down. But what I realized is when I wrote these things down, they became concrete, and then I could tell people about it. And that was actually when stuff started happening. It was kind of immediate. I mean, once I wrote down like a few ideas of here's how I want to, you know, transform the way I'm doing my work, I then could tell other people, and they were like, oh, I can help you with that. And so I think, again, when we're talking about this idea of doing this work, being public about it, going out into the world and doing it, that the sharing piece is important. You know, it's fine to be doing this in your notebook and doing it privately when you're sitting out and about wherever. But I think the big piece, though, is really that you're letting other people know about it. So I do have a question here, and it is, what do you look for in a collaborator? A disparity or similarity in philosophy, style, media, etc.? That's a great question. Thank you. I really am open-ended when it comes to collaboration. I think what I like to do a lot is basically when I meet somebody I like, I'm interested in, I enjoy talking to, whatever their interests are, whatever the thing that they do, I usually say, what can we do together? How can we collaborate? And sometimes it takes many conversations like that for something to come out of it. But almost always something eventually does, and that thing is pretty much never what I expected. I recently collaborated with a friend of mine who's an artist. Named Thea Duskin, and she and I have literally had conversations for probably over a year just about how we might work together. And what we did was we discovered what our mutual interests were, and through that then figured out what we'd like to make. And so there was a lot of areas where we don't connect on things, but the places where we do connect became this really cool opportunity for us to do a really neat art installation that was large scale over at the Chop Suey bookstore here in Richmond, Virginia, where I am. That was a 2-month long installation. It looked like nothing I've ever made, but at the same time, something that was very much me. And we had a great experience. We ended up collaborating with some writers as well. And so it became this really amorphous, giant, collaborative, amazing thing, all of which came out of not having any idea what we were doing. So I think more than anything, the collaborative piece is really, I think you can collaborate with anybody. I mean, I guess as long as you get along, but you don't necessarily have to be doing all the same stuff. But then once you are, you know, together, then I think the point is to really just not worry about trying to make the outcome something you know, have in your head already. Because that, I think the benefit of the collaborative piece is really discovering a new thing. So. And Ashley has a question. One big takeaway from Creative Sprint for me was not getting too caught up in overthinking it. As a creative, I imagine it's something you also deal with. What are some of your tactics to avoid this? Thanks. Yes, that's a good one. Overthinking is the death of creativity in many ways, right? I mean, I think what you have to do is sort of separate two things, which is coming up with good new ideas and then like making things happen. And I think part of it is like, what we're saying with the Creative Sprint is doing stuff makes ideas happen. But the stuff that you're doing to make ideas happen has to be just fun and random and just getting it done and not about perfectionism. That stuff comes later. So let's say you're doing this in a business context, right? The end product might need to be really well done, right? Might need, I don't like to say perfect, but let's say it, you know, has to be correct in some way. That's something you get to later. This part, what we're talking about here, is really the process piece, and the process piece has to be about this joy of discovery and this fun, playful atmosphere that's open and allows new things to come out, new ideas to spark. And it doesn't happen if the whole time you're going, how am I going to get this exactly right? How am I going to sell this? How am I going to whatever? All those thoughts just shut the whole process down. And so, wow. So the question is, what are some tactics to avoid this? In the work environment, it's really hard. Basically, what I end up doing in a work environment is I have to take a step back. And so I think the biggest thing is to not like try to be definitive in a process. I'm sorry, this sounds a little random, but I guess what I'm saying is like a lot of times on phone calls with clients or meetings with clients, you know, you're sort of trying to come up with some answer. And I realize a lot of times if I take a step back and take a moment, I can come back to it and say, you know what, now that I thought about this, I realize, you know, we're going down the wrong path. So going back to the getting out of your environment piece, sometimes for me, that means like I finish something, a meeting, and then I go off on my bike or out for a walk or wherever and clear my head. And then I'm able to sort of postulate again, like, what am I really doing? What was the point of this? What's the goal here? What am I really trying to do? I think that's kind of the answer to that, but at the same time, I feel like maybe not. So definitely, if Ashley, if you have some thoughts about that, or other people that are watching right now, if you want to post, and I will read your comments if you can't see the comments coming in, about this idea of the overthinking piece. Because I guess the term I use is preciousness, and this idea of sort of perfectionism around our work. And I think it is really, really hard, because I'm a perfectionist, and believe me, like this kind of stuff, even doing what we're doing right now, which is, you know, a live chat that I have no script for, that's a little nerve-wracking. And my biggest thing is sort of like agreeing to do things like that and diving in, and then, you know, knowing that once you're doing it, that it works out somehow. I had this talk, I made this a little bit of a side note, but maybe it would be of interest, that, you know, I do a lot of public speaking now, and I'll encourage somebody to come up and talk, or you know, hand the mic to somebody, and they're just, you know, deer in the headlights, freaked out about it. And I realized that, like, I've forgotten that, you know, that a lot of people are really afraid to do that. And what I tend to say is it's not that people who do it all the time, like me, aren't afraid. It's just that we just do it anyway. And I think that's sort of like the best advice for a lot of this stuff, is like, when there's fears tied up in the work that you're doing, creative work, you know, or any work, that stuff just builds up and builds up in your head. And so again, why we really encourage this idea of the creative sprint and the doing daily, and especially with this idea of like having a deadline and having an audience that's watching you, is that it's forcing you to get over these fears, and that when you do try things, you discover that it's no big deal. The fears weren't really justified, but I still have those fears, and it's really more about a habit of doing that overrides the fearful part of what's attached to this creative work. So hopefully that's a helpful thing. If you got other questions, please tweet them, post them there. We've got a little bit more time here. I was going to talk about something else, and I've just slipped my mind. I do want to remind everybody, again, if you're not already signed up, that creativesprint.co is the place to go. And please encourage your friends to do that as well. As I said, we are going to relaunch the Creative Sprint, the 30-day version, in September, I believe, is the current plan. So you guys are in on what's happening. We're in the midst of figuring out the details. But what we're going to do is want a ton of people to do this, because I think what we liked really best about this was it wasn't just that people are trying this idea of doing something daily whenever, it's that everybody was doing it at the same time, and then watching each other and commenting and supporting each other. And that, I love that. I mean, I gotta say, I mean, hopefully some of you can chime in about this, but I just thought it was amazing to see that when somebody would post something like on Instagram, all the comments, you know, initial comments were coming from all the other people doing the sprint, people that didn't know each other. And then I could see that, you know, when we did one of the sprint posts was about, a few of them actually were about collaboration, that then watching people collaborate with each other that only knew each other through that world was really cool. And I had that happen doing Skull a Day. I did a bunch of collaborations with people I've never met, still haven't met in person, but had great experiences with them virtually, which I really think is awesome, and is an issue. And that's actually part of the reason we're doing this live video chat is that, I'm not in the same space as you guys, and that happens a lot, and people work remotely. A lot of that's going on. My office, it's just me. There's no one else here usually. And that can be really isolating and really difficult for the creative process. And so I think, that's the other piece for me, is just this getting out piece, right? Is that getting out in real life, but also getting out through the social media environment as well. It's like sharing what you're doing is a great way for people to then participate in some way and give you encouragement and to collaborate with you and to do other things. So what other questions do you have? I have Twitter open, and I guess I can check Facebook real quick. Boy, that's a scary place to check. Talk about a time and mind suck. I don't see, really quickly, I don't want to take too much of your time looking over here. I don't see any specific questions over there. Okay, so yes, so I'm not going to give away what's happening in June, but it's coming soon, and we will give you a set of tasks to do. We love feedback. One of the things we really want you to do is share what you're doing online, but also share it with us. Tell us what it is that you are, how is this working for you? What do you like about it? What do you don't like about it? What would be better? What would be, make it even more exciting for you? I see a couple things popping up on the side. How do you help employers, clients understand that the time that goes into the creative process? My experience is that they always want things to be quantified exactly. Oh, that's really interesting. Wow, thank you, Ashley. This is some really good, tough stuff. Especially, the thing about doing creative work as work, right, instead of just for fun, is there's this whole thing about, like, how do you, you have to get paid to do it, so you have to quantify it. The way I would estimate the work I was doing is I would sort of just throw in a few hours that I'd be like, this is thinking time. And maybe they don't necessarily know that's there or they do, but I would just basically go, this job takes 20 hours. And in my head, what I had done is broken down, like, here's sitting in front of the computer for 3 hours, here's doing this for 2 hours, here's print production work for 2 hours, and here's, the thinking piece. And I think I just always had to basically write it into my estimate so that it was a part of it, rather than something I then had to justify later when they're like, what's going on? And the other thing is that I would always say, it's going to take 2 weeks to get this done. It's not that I need 2 weeks to make your piece. It's that I need a week just to, like, ponder it and have the gears in my head turn until I have something interesting to tell you. And a lot of times again, the best ideas that I get are on my bike, and I need time to ride my bike. So a lot of it is just having something in my head for a while before I can have a good idea. We did sort of, what's cool about the Creative Sprint and about some of the projects that I do in my book on stock, actually, is that we have some projects where it's about iterating really fast. And I have found you can kind of game the system a little bit if you're in a situation where you don't have a lot of time to do that. And it's mostly about just, like, having lots of ideas. The more ideas you have, the more likely you're going to have a good one. When I do a workshop, a lot of times with people, where I go and I have them do a project where they have to come with 100 solutions in about 30 minutes. And the interesting thing is, pretty much across the board, when I interview them afterwards and I say, so where was your most innovative idea? Right? Not your most well-resolved, but the most interesting one, the most unusual one. It's never in the first 5. It's usually, believe it or not, so out of 100, it's usually about 60 or 70. I mean, that's a massive amount. And when I say to people, how often do you get to idea 60 or 70 at work? I mean, the answer is never. And so that's a big light bulb for people to say, right, a lot of times what we're doing is we got one good idea and we go, or not even one good idea, one idea, and we just realize it, right? We make it work. And that is really a shame, because then we're not getting to the cool stuff. And so I think part of it too is, helping if we're talking about clients in this case, helping your clients to recognize that working with, just the first whatever thought, you're not going to get the really cool thing, and that process either takes space to do it or time to do it, and that has to be a part of it. A lot of what I do, I'll tell you, with working with clients, is educating them on what I do, and that realizing that, like, they don't know what I need to do the best job for them. And as long as I keep talking about that, I think that's the key. Okay, a couple questions I just saw. One on Twitter. Emma asked, I'm currently juggling life as a new mom. She wrote mum because she is you're Australian, right? Now I ask you a question. How did you chisel out the time in your day to do these projects? That's a good question. I did not have a child when I was doing the original Skull a Day, and I do have a child now, and a 2-year-old who's very busy. And doing the 30-day sprint was much harder than doing the Skull a Day project in terms of time management. The way I did the original one was that I made a little time at the beginning of my day before work, and then usually a little bit after. So I'd start like 8 to 9 a.m. let's say, before I started work at 9. I would do some skull work, and then I would often do like right after work, and that usually got done, and eventually it became part of my work day. With this creative sprint, because that morning time and afternoon, evening time spent with my daughter, it was really about carving out 20 minutes. And 20 minutes I could find even with playing with my daughter, and sometimes working with my daughter was the key, right? I would have her help me create something, or I would talk about what I'm doing with her, so that way she was there, but I didn't have to divide my attention too much. And honestly, even though it wasn't during the sprint, I wasn't making the really large scale, really elaborate projects of Skull a Day. The 20-minute projects, I still had some really cool, good ideas and some neat things to do. And I always think about what I do during these kind of the daily things, the sprints, as first drafts. I don't worry about them being perfect, because if I come up with a good idea that I've sort of partially realized in 20 minutes, I can then go back to that as sort of a sketch and go, okay, I like this idea. Let me do this again. Let me try another version of this. Let me refine this, and let me do that during my work day when if it's become work. And so it's a way to sort of note ideas and develop ideas in the short amount of time that I have. So I think it's about, again, finding those little bits of time. And for me, I've traveled a lot, so sometimes that's doing it on the train, or it's doing it in transit when I'm not driving, or riding my bike. But it's little time, and the little time does exist. And I think one thing you can do is start to recognize, when are you doing little things that aren't creative that fill up that time, right? Because a lot of times we're going to play a little game on the phone, or we're going to catch up on Facebook or whatever. And so there is some time, not much, but that time could be devoted to doing a little thing. But it requires the sort of discipline of it, which is what I like about the sprint, right? If I'm sharing it publicly, if I've got a little task to do every day, I'm more likely to do it than just sort of saying, yeah, I should be creative every day. That's super, super hard. So I hope that answers your question well. Beth had a question. As a writer, I'm forever trying to balance independent work and collaboration. Because I love collaborating, sometimes I have to give myself a pep talk to get the solo stuff done. How about you? That's funny. Great if you got that much collaborative work to do with other people. I'm what I say is I'm the world's best procrastinator. People think of me as somebody who gets a lot done and successful in that way. I think I don't get things done. I tend to put things off that I know I need to be doing, especially the creative work that I should be doing. And so what I tend to do is all the what I would call the easy stuff, the box checking stuff, answering an email, filling out a form, sending a package. I do all of that to clear the space and headspace, so I have no excuse but to do the creative work, which of course then it's 4 in the afternoon. Sorry, that's robots talking. So there's only a really, of course, the end of the day, and I'm like, why did I take all day to do this? And once I'm doing my creative work, I actually love it, and I have no idea why there's this weird fear around doing it, other than I don't know what the outcome will be, and that's terrifying to not know and at the same time have to do it. I don't have a good answer about how to do that, other than at least I'm being productive in the time that I'm not doing my creative work. But at the same time, I wish I had a way to do a better job. Oh, Beth just said she's got the world's best procrastinator title as well. Well, maybe we can share it then. Apparently we're not alone. Yeah, so I don't know if other people have a good idea about what to do about that. I think it's a really weird thing to realize, what I actually enjoy doing, I avoid doing. And I other than trying to organize my day so that I have no excuse but to do my creative work, I don't know. So yeah, I'd love to hear some more thoughts about that. Emma also said, do you have a mantra you go to when your perfectionism is getting the best of you? Other than I suck and I'm terrible and I don't make good work and I don't make enough things. I mean, this is really what I say, and believe. I mean, again, I have to tell you, a lot of people don't know that about me, but I'm always I don't make enough stuff. I don't do enough things. And people look at me like I'm crazy. So there's a mental problem with me, but I think with a lot of people around this stuff. So what do I do to get myself out of that place? Maybe I need a mantra. I don't think I have one around that. Yeah, I think it's less a mantra and more an action, which is again, not to harp on what we've been doing with the sprint, but the fact that I was forced to share this work during the sprint was a good reminder that it doesn't matter. Maybe that's the mantra. It doesn't matter. No one actually cares. I think that's the thing is I'm like, it has to be like this. And then when you share something that's imperfect and everyone goes, hey, that's great, good job. And you're like, oh, right. No one cares or no one knows is a pretty revelatory thing. And I think it definitely helped me because I felt very uncomfortable sharing some of the things during the sprint because they're not, great works of art. They're just little sketches I did, but people liked them and that made me feel good. And in my company, we've been talking a lot lately about this idea of the celebrating, like doing little celebrations constantly. And I think that makes a big difference. One of the things, and to go back to sort of the work thing that Ashley was talking about, well, is a lot of times with work and creative work, it takes forever to get stuff done. And while you're doing that, you end up like just miserable by the end of the process and you don't care and you don't like it anymore. And I think what's great about the little things, the creative sprint, the daily project, is that by getting things done every day, you can share them and immediately get the positive feedback and then get the encouragement and then you do something else and it builds. And by the end of Skull a Day, I was doing some really huge pieces, some really massive work that took lots of time, on the average 2 to 4 hours, but up to like 10, 11 hours, which is crazy in one day. But I started at 20 minutes. And I often talk about this idea that like, if I had taken one of those 10-hour projects and made that day one, instead of a little 20-minute project, I would have given up on it immediately. And so really it was a big deal for me to recognize that like the putting out of the first drafts, the getting of the positive response right away, the little celebrations built and built and built and allowed me to get to this much greater place by the end of the process. And so I think it's just the reminding yourself that it's adding up, that the little stuff builds the big stuff, that's really the key with that. So yeah, so do I need to, maybe you can help me write a mantra that's better than it doesn't matter, but maybe it doesn't matter is good. So let me know. Let me see if there's any other questions coming through. I don't see them on Facebook or Twitter, or I feel like doing this on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, you guys, all by myself. I feel really good about this. Okay, I don't see any more. And it's been about half an hour. So I'm going to say we're going to wrap up in a few minutes here. If there are any last thoughts or other pieces you want to add, please do. And I will keep an eye on those streams over here. If not, thank you so much for everybody who has been asking me questions and watching right now. This is great. This will stay online, so of course it's gonna be a weird thing to watch when it's not live, but I hope that people will, and we'll get some good insights from it. If you like this, let us know, because we're gonna possibly do it again. We might do some other short videos as a means of keeping people encouraged over the next few months as we do this monthly sprint, again, building up to another great 30-day sprint in the fall. So again, if you haven't already, please go to creativesprint.co and sign up. If you've signed up, please tell other people to do that. And also let us know once you're on the site if it makes sense. Check it out. There's some little interviews at the bottom that are really good about what people got out of their 30-day experience. If you haven't shared one with us, please do. We'd love to hear about that as well. Of course, use the Creative Sprint hashtag, even during these months when you're not doing it daily, just anything you do that you want people to see, because I'm checking that hashtag and I know a bunch of other people are, and it's really fun to be able to see what people are up to. So, and I got a tweet from Micah saying, apparently you can do it alone. Way to go. So yeah, one of my big statements I tell people about collaboration is you can't do it alone. But Micah, it's actually, I couldn't do it alone because it took a lot of work on your end for this to happen. So thank you for that. And thank you guys, really. It really makes a big difference. And I hope you're having a fun time. I hope you'll keep doing creative work and sharing that work and getting out. I'm going to get out as soon as this is done, because stifling office is not a fun place to be on a nice warm day. So enjoy your day, and thank you very much. And we'll see you next month, maybe. Bye.